is Riz Ahmed, Chief Research Officer here at SAPinsider, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Ian Thompson, Chief Operating Officer with Layer 7 Security. Ian, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's start with just some introductions, Ian. Why don't you tell the SAPinsider audience a little bit about yourself, your role as COO, and a little bit about Layer 7?
Sure, I'll do that. So as Riz said, my name's Ian Thompson. I'm the COO of Layer 7, and we've been in business. We're a Canadian company. We've been in business for about 11 years. We were founded in 2010. Initially, we were a services company. We did primarily vulnerability assessments and compliance against various security frameworks. And then over time, we, based on our customer needs, we developed some products based on Solution Manager to help organizations manage their threats against cybersecurity threats against their SAP landscape.
That's great. And we know that security is in the news today, right? Everybody's thinking about security. But what are some of the key trends that you're seeing, particularly for the SAP audience, in terms of security issues and challenges they're facing?
Right. So one of the things we've seen in the news are kind of two basic threats that are happening. One is ransomware, and the other one is supply chain type threats. Now, traditionally, with a lot of the cybersecurity tools, they're very general, and they don't give a lot of visibility into the SAP application layer. And with that in mind, there is vulnerability with SAP systems for ransomware software threats to be run embedded into the SAP landscape. And some of the our product really gives the visibility into that black box and could help detect and prevent these things from happening. The other one is like supply chain, of course, where we have the SolarWinds, Microsoft, where attackers use trusted connections with external vendors and use that to compromise applications. So these are some of the big trends that we see happening right now in the industry from an attack perspective.
Let's drill into those a little bit and talk about sort of what are some things that people aren't doing right, and how are you helping to sort of cover and sort of close these vulnerabilities. Let's start with ransomware, because this is a absolutely important part of the audience. So what do SAP customers need to know about preparing for ransomware and building a true strategy around this?
So it's a very good question. At a high level, there's a few strategies. One, from a policy and training perspective, I'm really looking at kind of the user community, what they execute. And this is all around training in terms of ensuring that they don't execute applications that cause ransomware to be embedded within the network. And then from a software tool perspective, to ensure that the tools are able to detect when files are being executed. For instance, Layer 7's our product actually looks at even through the whole SAP technology stack, and even looks at the operating system. So it could detect if files are being executed, if there's critical or dangerous or commands being executed at the operating system level that could detect ransomware. So, and this will trigger alerts in near real time so that an incident response could be generated.
Let's move to the next trend you talked about, supply chain. Can you let's talk a bit about some of those, because I know particularly in this disruption, this time of the last year and a half, supply chains have been, we saw the Suez Canal, we saw things. So talk a little bit about some of those and how do you work with clients to kind of support and close that vulnerability?
So supply chains, as you know, devastating, right? It's not only just the companies being attacked, but what we're seeing is real services being interrupted to real people. Like in the US, there were millions of people that were denied resources when for the last one. And then there's Microsoft. I know everyone was impacted from who used Microsoft, from email, Teams, things like that. So these are pretty critical attacks that happen. Now, from a layer 7 perspective, there's a few things that we do. Our product is basically closed source. So there's no connection to any external vendor, software, site, anything like that. It's completely closed. So there's no way even our security extension for Solution Manager can be attacked through any type of supply chain attack, which is really important. Because one good way is to come through the security channel. So that kind of makes us pretty unique. The other thing we do is through our threat detection. So there's kind of two pieces we look at. One, we look at all the logs in your SAP landscape looking for specific threat vectors. We have like over 500 or 600 different combination of patterns that we look for, specifically related to supply chain type attacks. The other thing that we do is we use machine learning and anomaly detection to look for, after we learn the software learns your system, we could tell exactly, hey, this is different. This user or this IP address every day, just downloads, 100 megabytes of data. Suddenly, all week it's just downloading, gigabytes of data. Immediately, that's an alert for investigation. So those are some of the techniques that we really do to help identify supply chain threats and attacks coming in.
Are there any other areas that you suggest people really pay attention to when it comes to supply chain risks?
Yeah, so what's really challenging about supply chain risk is that they're actually using trusted connections, right? So I have a vendor that is providing either a managed service, they're maintaining things, so they need access to my software, to my environment, through my network. And the really way to get around that is really on the vendor side to ensure that there's audits done from a compliance perspective, from peer reviews in terms of the software, and evidence that these things are done, and they're done periodically. It's very important on to challenge the vendors on that, to ensure that what they bring into your environment is very clean and clear. The other piece, as we spoke about, is around monitoring, really monitoring what's coming in and what's coming out. From a user behavior, since it's a trusted connection, and a lot of these things happen automatically, right? They automated processes. It's very difficult to really kind of change a user behavior. So it's really, to me, more around policies, audits of the vendor and the processes within the organization to ensure that these things don't happen.
Right. That makes sense. And let's talk a little bit more about how you differentiate yourself, because I know from our previous conversations, part of it is this integration with Solution Manager, and the way you enable people to use Solution Manager, something everybody uses to support security. Can you talk a little bit about that differentiator a bit?
Sure, we have a couple of them. So one of the things that we speak about internally is sweat the asset. So our philosophy is you spent a lot of money getting getting in an SAP landscape installed to drive kind of the business results. And within that, there's a lot of tools that SAP provides. One of them, again, is Solution Manager, which sits in your environment, connects to all your different managed systems, and also has a very secure connection to the SAP backbone for things like patch management. So what we've done at Layer 7 is leverage this infrastructure, plug the gaps where Solution Manager doesn't do things well. We plug the gaps and then leverage what it does excellently. For instance, around things like patch management. So that's one of our differentiators. It's literally leveraging what you have, and every enhancement to our product set that we do, we look at what can we enhance, what's already there. So the research is always looking at that. The other primarily key differentiator is that we look across the whole SAP technology stack. So we do databases, we do the application, the ABAP code. We look at the actual operating system and the gateway components we mentioned, like SAP router and web dispatcher. All these things are within our purview. So an SAP application consists of many different components kind of working together. And we're the only company that goes across the whole technology stack to secure your SAP application landscape.
That's great. And talk a bit about some of the customers and the roles you serve, and I'd imagine it's every CISO on down, but
Right.
can you talk a bit about, who are the particular roles within the organizations that you work with and support, and if you have any great examples of customers you're working with and how, and I know security is sensitive, so you may not be able to name them,
exactly.
but you could just describe kind of the types of organizations as well.
So we have a variety of organizations, from extremely large, like literally household names that use our products, and to medium size, and some even smaller companies. So we have the gamut. And from an industry perspective, from retail, pharmaceutical, government, any one of the 350,000 people that use SAP applications worldwide, in all the different industries and countries, we have customers there. Now, in terms of the stakeholders we serve, so security is kind of a wide topic within an organization. So at the lowest level, there's SAP security, that they are one of our key stakeholders. There's also basis security. There's also this security operations organization that get this information that is from the SAP landscape, right up to senior management through our things like our dashboards. At a glance, you can literally see which system compliant with which framework, like the SAP standard baseline or NIST or PCI or SOX. You could see at any point which reports into compliance, and all that reporting filters all the way up to the C-suite, senior management, so that they really understand exactly what is the state from a cybersecurity perspective of the SAP landscape. So all these multiple stakeholders we need to keep happy.
Ian, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your support and insight.
It's my pleasure.
Great.
Riz, yeah, thank you.